Hello, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, happy wintertime to all my Zen Disc Golf friends and family. Thank you so much for joining us for episode number 17 of the Zen Disc Golf podcast. You know, podcasting is all about trial and error. We've learned a lot over the year, and I'm sure that if you listen to earlier episodes from this year, you'll hopefully hear a lot of growth on the show. As a podcaster, though, the first thing you learn when you're getting ready to start a podcast is that while it's free to listeners, it's not necessarily free to the podcasters themselves. And the more people who subscribe and listen, which is awesome, and the more demand for regular shows, which is also awesome, the more money it costs to run this show. So, as a podcaster, you're faced with a few options. Eat the cost, but inevitably this will be this show's demise as record numbers of listeners join in and you can't afford to keep it all running smoothly. Get advertising, which we've been insanely lucky to find supporters who have helped us get this show off the ground, or go straight to your biggest supporters, your listeners. So once again, trial and error. I want to bring you a solid podcast with solid co-hosts and solid giveaways. Everybody loves the giveaways. But a podcast that brings you positivity and uplifting entertainment. And I come to you, my listeners, my disc golf family, with an alternate to advertising. I've set up a button on my website where you can donate between $1 to $3 a month and see this show keeps running regularly, smoothly, and continues to give away massive amounts of plastic. That's what everybody wants, right? Massive mounds of plastic. And that's only at minimum $12 a year, and it goes to a great cause, this show. Now, I'm only asking if you love this show to consider donating $1 a month. Just $1 a month. What can you get for $1 anymore? You can donate more if you like, but no more than $3 monthly. I am the last person in the world who wants to put a hurting on anybody's wallet. But there's more in it for you than just the feeling of warmth in your heart for keeping a show you love going. When we reach 50 donating members a month, I'm going to pick one of them per month and send a $20 gift card to Infinite Discs. Oh, and to make it fair, if you donate $1 a month, you get one entry in the drawing, $2, 2 entries, and $3, 3 entries per month. So set it, forget it, and you have 12 chances a year to win even more plastic. Thanks for listening to my pitch. Thank you for listening in general, and I hope you love the show. And now it's time for your moment of Zen. Worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength. That comes from Corrie Ten Boom. Welcome to number 17! And welcome to episode 17 of the Zen Disc Golf podcast. I am your host, Patrick McCormick, aka Zen Disc Golf, and the author of what has become known as the greatest stocking stuffer book of all time, Zen and the Art of Disc Golf. I'm joined here by 3 of my friends. First of all, Zach Engelhart, aka the Ticklish Hamster, who if disc golf were a religion, he would be known as the Pope of DG.
Yes, what's up, Pat?
Hey, man. I'm also joined by Tim Steward, a.k.a. Mind Body Disc, who writes the Mind Body Disc Glog. The Mind Body Disc.
I'm a glogger.
The Mind Body Disc blog, and has the greatest voice in disc golf podcasting. How you doing, Tim?
Good, man. Good. I'm good. Hopefully my voice will match Zach's hat. As the Pope, he gets to wear cool headgear.
Hey, but I'm not the one that has a line of Mind Body Disc clogs.
This is true. Oh man, that's brilliant.
I'd like to see that. Somebody please Photoshop that for us. And we're also joined by Chris Bawden, aka Disc Golf Chris of DG Puttheads, already nominated for the MVP of Disc Golf Bloggers for 2016. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Patrick. Thanks for having me on again. It's great to be back.
It's awesome. It's good for all of us to be back. I know it's been, I don't know if it's been about a month since our last pod. Just holidays and kids and all kinds of stuff. Just kind of, they're being total pod blocks.
Well, fortunately for you guys, I've really cleared my schedule. I put my kids up for adoption, and I'm a Jehovah's Witness now, so I'm clear.
But what about all that time you have to spend walking door to door?
I'm only a Jehovah's Witness in the sense that I'm not buying anyone a gift for Christmas.
Oh, okay. Not offensive at all to any of our listeners, hopefully. So anyways, I'm drinking about half my coffee. And if you remember back to episode, I don't remember what it was when Zach and I were talked about for coffee for a while, I got to thinking and wondering what you guys do. What's your morning drink? Because I am on fire right now. I've got a venti iced coffee, 2 shots of espresso. Sometimes I do 3 shots of espresso, and cream, no sugar. But unfortunately, I had to even delay starting this podcast because I have been running to the potty over and over and over this morning. My buddy's like, I gotta pee.
I love it. I guess most evenings when I get up to start my day, the company that I work for owns Maxwell House.
Oh, wow.
So we have their coffee for free, and the guys like to make what they describe affectionately as motor oil.
Nice. Anything like what I tried to feed you that one day?
You know, yours is a lot better. It's got a lot better flavor. You know, Maxwell House is kind of just, I don't know, it's like the water of coffee, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. And so they put a ton of coffee in and then make very little coffee. So it's really strong. I have to put a little water in it just to get it to not taste bad. But I guess that'll happen when you work in a factory.
Tim, you seem like a bulletproof coffee kind of guy.
You know, I wish I liked coffee. If it tasted like it smelled, I would drink the heck out of it. But I've never been able to like coffee. I've never developed a taste for it. And it's something I wish I did, but I just don't. But instead, I drink the nectar of the gods, otherwise known as Diet Mountain Dew.
Okay.
And by the liter.
Does that smell like it tastes?
If by delicious you mean it smells and it tastes delicious, yes.
What about you, Chris? What's your
Coffee.
wake up drink? Coffee.
Just coffee.
Just black or what?
Yeah, a little bit of cream now and then. I've tried that thing you're drinking. I don't know if that actually constitutes as coffee, but they're all right. But it's just coffee. I've used to do espresso, but it's gets my heart beating too fast.
Yeah, I think that's what's going on with me right now. So I apologize to our listeners if I'm just all over the place. Actually, this is an all over the place podcast because when we started kind of brainstorming about what we were going to do for episode 17, I sent you guys, hey, start brainstorming. And Chris sent me a long email about all his ideas.
To be fair, I shrunk the font so it didn't take up as many pages.
And so I was very appreciative of that. I want to go over some of those things that he wanted to talk about. Some of them are kind of smaller ideas. Others are bigger ones. So we'll cover some of them and then save some for another episode. Maybe we should give Chris a monologue in the Zen Disc Golf podcast just for you to rant about something. That would be a good segment.
Oh, I don't know if you can trust me with a rant. Especially if I've been drinking espresso.
Yeah, right.
It's hot then.
I've always thought about the idea of giving Zach a rant, but then I already have to edit this podcast enough.
Yeah, somebody would. I'd end up. Yeah, the FCC would find me.
So when I sent out a message this morning, hey, we're getting ready to pod for like the first time in a month on Facebook and Twitter, I got a lot of stuff from people. One of the things I got in a direct message was from a guy on Facebook, Robert Rhoades, and he says, hi, I was having a conversation on the Reddit disc golf subreddit earlier and had an idea that may be a good topic for podcast, and that's adaptability. One of our local courses has about an 8-foot concrete around the front 9 baskets to make them handicap accessible. This is, of course, causes a lot of skid-offs, and if you don't lay up in just right, it results in a longer putt than if you just parked it. And the first thing I thought when I read that was, and a lot of damaged discs. Hope you're not throwing a lot of DX plastic on that. He said, but my thought was that it forces me to change my game and think about how I'm going to lay up or putt and what disc I'll use. Do I lay up with a G-Star AVR because I know it won't have much move when it hits the concrete, or do I go for the run with my Wizard? The basic thought came out of the conversation that made me want to message you guys was, unless you got a bulldozer in your bag, the course ain't going to adapt to you. So that's a funny way to put it. So he wanted us to talk a little bit about adaptability, and that could probably be its own podcast. But what do you guys think about that concrete pad? Have y'all ever seen that around a around a basket?
No, never seen anything like that. It's the first thing that comes to mind is I think that's it's a great new obstacle, and great that they're trying something new to include everybody, but it does sound dangerous, like you said, with discs flying into it. I'd be tentative personally.
But you,
go ahead, Tim.
It reminds me of they're putting a lot of disc golf courses on ball golf courses now, and I know when you play out there, the grass is really short, and boy, you get some skips and things there too. It's not quite concrete, but I'll tell you, when the grass is short, it's pretty close. So it definitely makes you change up your game a little bit. For me, I don't throw different discs. I try and throw shots that just land flat in that instance.
I will say I haven't seen the concrete that this person's talking about. What I have seen is at the Clay Disc Golf Course in Clay, Alabama, which is home to the world famous double-decker putter wrecker, is a basket completely surrounded by 20 feet of bamboo wall on 3 sides with basically a doorway you got to throw through. And I did bend a few discs hitting that.
So it's interesting you bring that up. Our home course, Birchfield Park, here in Michigan on Devil's Den, hole number 17, they just did something similar. They put poles all the way around. It used to be an island green where the whole green was actually sand, and you had to throw in there for it to be considered inbounds. And they've just put up this wall around it with a doorway on the left side. And it's interesting now, it's still under construction, but right now the basket is still low. So it's kind of neat. You can go for an ace almost every time. And if you miss the basket, you hit the inside of the wall, but they're eventually going to raise that up. So the strategic thinking is go for an ace and you might just throw right over it, or you could land softly inside there, but it's going to be difficult to safely go for an ace. So it's certainly a new challenge, but at least the way they've done it makes it look really, really aesthetically pleasing hole.
Right on. So a note about adaptability. I've talked a lot about in the past when we talk about stacking our bags and what we place in our bags. Zach knows this about me. Whenever I arrive at a course, I usually pick the discs that go with the course for me. I know a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people bring just everything on the course, or their bag never changes or whatever. I'm fortunate enough to be sent enough plastic in the mail. It's a great problem to have. But to get sent enough stuff in the mail to try out. And I tend to use the same discs or same couple of discs on different holes on different courses. And there's a disc that I'll use on one of our courses that I won't use on other courses. And so I kind of adapt my bag to the course. Any other ideas? Y'all have adaptability?
So how do you stack your bag if you're going to a new course and you don't know what to expect?
I'll throw in probably a lot of my old standards, and then maybe a few things that I like to use a lot that are different, like the flick, the DISCRAFT flick, just in case discs, and I might be carrying slightly heavier load, just in case. Or I might just walk out there with a putter and just say, hey, I'm going to try and hit everything with a putter, and then I'll learn the course and what I need to do next time I play.
I'm pretty much the same, Chris. When I play a new course, which it's feast or famine for me on a new course, I'll either play really well and it's fun, or I should have just stayed home. Like, it's that bad where it's almost unsettling. Like, how could I possibly make this many mistakes? and even keeping a positive attitude, you're still kind of shaking your head. I keep it simple, and I make sure there's a handful of the same discs in my bag every time. My Voodoo and my Mystic can pretty much get me through just about anything. And I don't like throwing drivers too much, so I don't really have to.
That's an interesting strategy, going out with just a putter on a new course.
Yeah, I mean, just to go out there and kind of goof around a little bit, see what the course is all about, see all 18 holes or however many holes are out there, and then you can kind of make a mental note what you need to grab next time. I mean, there's two different ways you could go with it, but I always play just to have fun. It's not like I'm going to go for a first time on a tournament and go, well, I'm just using a putter today, you know? I might not even keep score. It might just be a walk in the woods with a purpose, as it were. So that's kind of how I. What about your adaptability? You have any adaptability stories there, Tim?
It's interesting that you bring up how you build your bag, because I put my bag together based on covering flight lines more than anything else.
Okay.
And I'm not looking necessarily for a disc for each flight line. I know that if I can cover 3 or 4 different types of shots with one disc, that's what I'm going to try and do. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that all the most common flights are covered. So I've got a short, straight hyzer and anhyzer shot. I've got a medium range, straight anhyzer and hyzer shot, and so forth. That way, when you go out to a course, instead of looking at the obstacles that are there, the things that you haven't seen before, if it's a new course, I'm really trying to think in my head of what other holes have I played that require the same line. And then in my head, I just imagine the hole that I have played a bunch of times, take the disc that I would throw there to cover that particular line, and then I'll throw that. So instead of kind of trying to adapt my game to the course that I'm on or to the new situation, I try and think back to a time in the past where I've already done that and done it successfully, and then just do that again. Right
on. And like you said, that is interesting because, Tim, we know you're a little analytical.
Slightly.
So your approach would naturally be, a little bit more analytical, whereas mine is just kind of go out there and just piddle around. Okay, well, I might need something different here. Okay, next time.
Just feel the energy of the course and go with it.
Yeah, that's the hippie in me, I guess. So anyways, so let's talk about something different here. Somebody asked, let's see. Garrett Daly said, I'd like to hear about disc selection. Hey, we just covered that. Awesome. And throw troubleshooting for new players. How do I fix my throw for more accurate upshots and longer drives? That's his first part of the question. That's something that it's going to be tough to talk about on a podcast, but we may be able to give a few tips. What do you guys think about that? How can I fix my throw for more accurate upshots and longer drives?
It's a loaded question.
I would have to give the same, I feel like a broken record because I give this advice a lot, but you have to, I really think that every good solid disc golf game starts with being able to throw a putter. I really think that if you go out and you learn to throw a putter cleanly and smoothly with no flutter, get it out to 200 to 250 feet without it burning and having a nice stable flight. If you can do that, when you pick up your other discs, your accuracy is through the roof. Your distance is up. Everything else improves based on that one skill because it teaches you to throw cleanly on plane with good snap, with good form. And all of those things are what create accurate shots. And by the way, if you can learn to throw your putter 200 to 250 feet, you've got your upshots covered.
Absolutely. And just a little bit of insight on the part he asked about upshots. The best way, in my opinion, to practice upshots is to take somebody else out on the course with you and toss a disc back and forth. Here's an interesting kind of mental handicap that I think we have. We can grab a nice soft disc, a nice throw and catch disc, or not even a throw and catch disc, but a disc that's not going to hurt somebody. It's not like a I don't know. Somebody think of a real sharp disc. It's not a nuke. It's not like throwing a nuke at each other. But it's grab like a nice putter or something. It's a nice soft disc and toss it back and forth. I feel like there's a mental handicap when you remove that other guy and put a basket in place, especially for new players. I don't know what it is, because if you go out there and toss something back and forth, they're able to get that disc to you every time, for you to catch it, if they've ever thrown Frisbees before or thrown discs. But you take that other player out, you add a basket, and they're wild. Or throwing too hard or too soft, or I don't know what exactly that is. But with as far as upshots go, I just started in the backyard. I have a basket, just kind of tossing at the basket, but also, throw a disc back and forth with a partner or somebody you're playing with. Man, I think I grew just be exponentially as far as upshots go when I was just throwing towards somebody, and then you kind of pretend like that basket is just somebody you're tossing a disc to. Any other insights?
A lot of my upshot game was derived out of necessity, because for me, putting is, again, feast or famine, and I either putt very well or it's very poor. So I try to be as close to the basket. I can't remember who said it, but what's the best part of your putting game is that I don't have to do it very often. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I feel. So in the quest to kind of lower the score, I would like to practice, and I'd spend and that's why you notice, Pat, I carry like 26 putters. Mm-hmm. I'll just take all of them, throw them one after another, get a good feel for that 200-foot in range. And the more you do it, the smaller that window gets, and it gets closer and closer and closer. You dial it in, then you're just comfortable. It's muscle memory.
Sure. And just so everybody knows, Zach is very humble. He's actually a very good putter.
Nice. Zach, you bring up a really good point. I think a lot of times too, when I see people trying to learn a new disc golf skill, they underestimate just how much practice it takes to get good at a particular throw. And I see people go out and they'll go out to a baseball field one day, or they'll go out on the course for one day and they'll throw 20 or 30, they'll take 20 or 30 shots and they'll go, okay, I practiced that shot. How come I'm not good at it? And I don't think they understand that to groove something into your muscle memory takes hundreds and sometimes thousands of the same throw over and over and over again while you're paying attention to form, while you're concentrating on what you're doing. And I think sometimes people give up on a skill before they've really given themselves a realistic chance to get good at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd like to add something in there. As Tim mentioned, it takes thousands and thousands of throws over and over again while paying attention to form. And that's absolutely true. And one of the things that I personally experienced, and I've seen a lot of people experience, is when you start doing those throws over and over again, sometimes you end up getting numb and you forget little small aspects of your form. So one thing that I highly recommend, if you can find a way, is get a video of yourself. It can be something as simple as setting your phone against a tree and recording yourself do some of those throws repeatedly. You can get a little bit more advanced, but really all you need is a video to watch yourself. And then there's a lot of people out there that are more than happy to help you. I was just on Reddit the other day, and somebody had posted a YouTube video of himself throwing, just asking for critique on his form, and the number of people that were responding saying, this is what you might want to think about. It was amazing. And for the most part, people were very positive, saying, hey, just check this out. But it really makes a very large difference when you can actually see what you're doing, especially over time, seeing just the small little aspects of your form.
Right on. Good advice, Chris. Actually, it's funny because I was just reading down ahead, and it's I have this Thomas Sawtell says, I think there isn't enough good discussion about effective practicing. There's a lot of videos about gaining distance and putting forms, but no discussion on how to practice a course and prepare for a tournament. So as far as we've talked a lot about practicing here and how important that is there any adjustments you guys make to how you practice, how effectively you're practicing or efficiently you're practicing when you're gearing up for a tournament versus just kind of like piddling around?
Absolutely. I would, in my disc golf adolescence, if you want to call it that, when I first learned to play and I bought my first basket, my goal was 4 hours a day of just putting. Wow.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I would wait until my wife and kids went to bed, and I would get up and stay up a couple extra hours late at night and just practice it and going. But I did it in a whole bunch of different ways. If the weather was bad and it was hurricane conditions in Florida, I was out there in my raincoat. If it was windy, if it was cold, if it was 100 degrees outside, even went as far as doing it when I was, if we had like a social gathering and you're 10 beers deep and you can kind of one eyeball, like, that too. And that's me.
How was that again?
But you know how it goes. And every different weather condition, and doing it from different angles, from around the corner of a house, behind a car, from under a tree.
But don't throw in the street because you might hit a lady through a window.
Yes, that too. But, you know, and I hope she's okay. I gotta send her a Christmas card. Just everything you could think of over and over again, and not just do it once. Like, oh, cool, I'll throw all 5 of my putters in this one shot. No, I mean, I'll spend an hour doing this one thing, and you know, oh, okay, I haven't done any turbo putts in a month. I'll spend 16 hours this week just doing turbo putts, and the gambit of weather that could be in a given week.
I like that you mentioned putting under trees. And Tim, I know you've mentioned this in 1 or 2 of your articles. You know, it's really important to practice putts that are more frequent than you actually realize, such as under trees and getting on your knees and trying to do little flick putts, because those are some that you don't really think about. A lot of the time you think about different angles. But when it comes down to it, when you get on the course, there's a lot of trees out there. There's a lot of weeds that you got to putt over, under. So it's really important to think about the different positions that your body's going to be into.
Man, don't be afraid to fall down and bust your noggin a little bit on a tough putt. You really want to win, you kind of got to bleed sometimes.
You got to sacrifice your body for that. Hey, you know, it's funny too, because I can't tell you how many times I've been in a tournament where somebody will have to straddle putt, and you know, if you play with any trees at all, you're gonna have to straddle putt a couple times around. But it's funny to me how everybody says every time they have to do it, they're like, "Oh man, I don't know how to straddle putt." And I'm thinking to myself, how many times in a round do you end up having to straddle putt before you go practice that?
I've ended up turbo putting a lot recently, because now that all the leaves are down, my discs will find their way down deep into the weeds. And there's a lot of pricker bushes out where we play, so I have to get my hand up above those. And I mean, I suppose I could just throw through them and, you know, cut up my hand like Zach said, but you know, I'm not as tough as Zach is, so I like to try to throw over them.
I love turbo putting. I don't know why. I just do. Just wanted to throw that in there. I like discs. Actually, Tim, Rodney Lane wanted you to go over proper disc for arm speed from your article. He wanted to know if you could expand on that, or maybe talk to our listeners about that article that you wrote.
Really quick there. He's the other co-author of DG Puttheads.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if we weren't hitting what Rodney wanted to, maybe Chris could help us expand the question. But yeah, Tim, you want to talk a little bit about your article you wrote, and I'll link it up in the podcast notes.
It's been a super popular article. So it's something that I figured out a little while ago, and I was really frustrated that, you know, some discs would just fly great for me, and other discs I just couldn't get to work, and I couldn't figure it out. You know, I'd watch somebody throw, a destroyer, and then I'd go throw a destroyer, and it just wouldn't do what everybody else was making it do, and I couldn't figure that out. And then one day I kind of realized that maybe I wasn't throwing it hard enough or fast enough, or with enough snap or spin. And how could I figure out which discs would fly? Because, you know, to kind of back up a step, in order to get any distance out of a disc, you've got to get it to turn over a little bit. You know, you've got to get it to turn and flip and get to flat or a little past. And the longer it stays in that portion of its flight, the longer it's going to stay in the air, and the farther it's going to go. But in order to get it into that portion of its flight, you have to get it up to whatever that disc's preferred speed is. So if you look at a disc and it says it's a speed 14, and then its turn is a -1, and then its fade is a 2 or something like that, in order to get it to that -1, you've got to throw it at 14 speed. But like I noted in the article, there's no arm speed scale. You can't go to your buddy and go, "Hey, what speed arm do I have?" You know, so you've got to kind of.
I miss that laugh, Zach. Haha, tree-eyed.
Yes.
It's true though. You can't live. But hey, man, eyeball this for me. You think I'm a 13? What do you think?
You got to measure your arm. You got to go pit to middle finger.
Instead of the tickets to the gun show T-shirt, I'm wearing a shirt that says I'm jacked at a speed 14.
There you go. That's it.
But so it's hard to tell that. So the only way that you can tell that is you got to get out and throw some discs. And when I realized, I took a stack of drivers out. I threw, I think, everything from like a speed 8 or a 9 all the way up to a speed 15. I think I had with a Michelin. And I realized that at about speed 12. That speed 12 disc, which for me is my favorite driver, the Trespass, that thing flies exactly like it's supposed to. It flips over into its little bit of a turn, and it slides right a little bit, and it stays in the air a long way. And as soon as I go to a speed 13 or 14 disc, I can't get him to get into that turn. So it kind of dawned on me that you can figure out what discs are working for you on any given day by just quickly throwing a bunch of them and figure out which ones are flying how they're supposed to and which ones they're not. And that way, how fast your arm is, helps you pick out new discs and things like that. So it relays to all of the other numbers. If it's a high glide disc, then you've got to be able to, again, get it up to that speed to get it to glide that much. It also means that if you're throwing lower speed discs, that you've got to kind of slow your arm speed down. A lot of people, they'll pick up, when I mentioned before throwing putters, and a lot of people go, I don't understand how come I can't throw a putter? And part of it is because you're trying to throw it as hard as you're throwing a driver. And you can eventually do that if you've got perfect form, but if you're throwing a speed 5 or 6 disc, you can't throw it at a speed 14. It's not going to fly like the numbers say it's going to fly. So if you want it to fly like the numbers say it's going to fly, you got to kind of match your arm speed to the disc speed. So that was kind of the point and the gist of the article. There's, when you really start thinking about it, there's so much more involved. And I put a couple things in there. Like if you can't throw cleanly, none of that matters. If you're torquing everything over and rolling your wrist and throwing everything with Anheuser, none of this really matters. It really relies on you throwing the disc flat and clean for any of that other stuff to work.
Right. And I read an article either this week or last week, and I'm so terrible. I should just start saving these so I remember what it was. Might have been one of you guys wrote it. I don't know. But I think it was from a disc golf manufacturer. It might have been Dynamic. I'm not sure. But it said something about, what do these numbers mean on your disc? And then you click the link and it opens up and it says they mean nothing. Because there's no way there's no standard. Because there's so many different ways you can throw them. So,
well, I don't think people understand. There's no machine that you put a disc in, and it says. I think in my article, I kind of compared it to the naming hat from Harry Potter. Like there's a magical thing that you hold the disc under, and it goes, "You are a speed 14 and a glide 3." There's nothing that does that. There's some dude out behind the back of the factory throwing it and going, "Yeah, it's like a 14 and about a 6, and then we'll call it a 0 and a 1. Let's put those numbers on there, Sally. Get that disc out in the shops."
Yeah.
There's no standard. And then one of those people is sitting at a high altitude, one of them's sitting at a low altitude, one of them's got a good arm, one of them doesn't have a good arm. And it's really just it's approximation at best to give you a general guideline. And in the end, we've all thrown discs that fly nothing like their numbers fly.
Yeah, and I think the ultimate thing is just throw the disc, figure out what it does for you, and then relate it, put it in your bag where it needs to be, and throw it on the hole you need to throw it, or in the situation that you need to throw it. Don't go by, well, it does this for my buddy, but it does this for me. I just can't figure it out. Well, no, you've figured out that just does something different for you. So use it the way that it works for you.
One thing that can help sometimes is trying to disc out before you know the numbers. I know that's hard, especially if you're going to buy a disc, but most of us have enough friends that have a disc or two that you can borrow. Grab a disc, go out there and just throw it and see how it works for you before you know the numbers. Once you know the numbers, you've already got some sort of a bias in there. So it can be really helpful to just try throwing it and see how your body how the disc reacts to your body throwing it.
Awesome. So that actually reminds me of the Disc Golf 101 podcast that we did a while back. I'll link up to that. But I think if you're getting anything out of this segment, you should definitely go back and listen to that one, because we go very in depth in all of the numbers. And I think Tim gives the exact same advice. First of all, you've got to be able to meet that speed number to make all the other numbers do what they got to do. But that was one of my favorite podcasts I did with you guys. So a couple quick questions. We'd be at a miss if we didn't mention the holidays coming up and Christmas and everything. Before we move on to what we're throwing, I got a couple questions for you guys, because these always come up for me during the year right before Christmas. I take a lot of people out on the golf course or on the disc golf course during the year, and a lot of times I start getting texts from people, "Hey, what should I get for so-and-so for Christmas? I know they're just getting into disc golf." So my first question is, what would you say for the disc golf person that has nothing would be the best gift for that new disc golfer for the new year? Go ahead, Chris. I'll get Chris, Tim, and then Zach.
My favorite was always just getting discs that I had no idea what they were. Just go out and throw. For me, it was new plastic. I mean, there's all sorts of things. There's baskets. There's awesome. You can get minis, you can get towels. But for me, it was always just new discs to get out and try. And not just for the new plastic, but so that I could learn what the discs do, and so that I could have a better reference for when I picked up new discs.
Right on. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I would have to second that. I mean, as a new disc golfer, there's nothing better than getting new plastic. If I've got to add something to that, I think every golfer needs a nutsack. The bag, the bag.
I have one of those too, and it's incredible.
But I think that would do a good service to the new disc golfer. So even though they might be getting a lot of plastic, they can only carry 5 or 6 discs.
Okay.
I think is doing them a good service. And it's an inexpensive bag. It's a good gift. It'll last them forever. They're really well made. And I think even as you grow as a disc golfer and start carrying more and more, there's still plenty of times when I grab my nutsack and go out on the course. God, I love talking about that bag.
And that's the one that I usually keep about 6 to 8 discs stacked in, and I leave it in my car at all times, no matter where I'm going, whether it's just going to work or going on a trip somewhere. It's always in there. It's small enough that it's easy to carry around, and then I always have something in case I need to get out and throw.
Yeah, it's my glow bag. It's my winter setup bag. It's really, every disc golfer needs a nutsack.
Awesome.
I had to squeeze that in there.
Zach.
Well, for a new disc golfer, with the holidays coming around, I think the biggest thing, the best gift is the gift of giving. So just give me all your discs. If I'm a little weird as far as what I think golfers need, and I think it comes down to footwear. I think a lot of the game starts with a stable base. If it were me, I'd ask for a pair of Solomons. That's what I'd ask for.
Nice.
That's really not a bad idea. I remember when I got started, I had no idea what to wear. I tried wearing boots and they were too clunky for me, but everything else was slipping out on the, especially on the dirt tees and in the fairway. So that's actually a really, really good idea. You can concentrate on things other than just keeping your balance.
Yes.
Okay. So second question, best gift for the disc golfer who has everything.
Again, I would say the best gift is giving, so just give me everything.
Yeah, he's got it all. Why doesn't he give some of it away?
I for the disc golfer that's got everything, I think a safe bet is to get him a new towel. I go through, my towel just takes an absolute beating.
Okay.
And so it's always good to have a spare. You play a wet round, okay, well, it's just been raining for the last 4 hours. That towel is useless. Now you got a spare. That, for me, it's like socks. You can never have too many.
Anybody else?
This is a hard one to answer, but
more plastic.
Well, that's what I was getting at. A custom disc. The hard part is if you don't know disc golf yourself, if you don't know what type of discs the person likes to throw, then getting a custom dye job can be a little bit risky. And I don't keep any discs just to hang up. I made a resolution a long time ago that I'm not going to just collect discs. It's just my personal thing. I throw everything. So, but my wife ended up getting me a disc with a Sasquatch stamp on it a couple of years ago, and that's by far my favorite disc that I've ever gotten. And she did good. She ended up getting me a Legacy Rival, and so it worked out. But that one's kind of risky if you don't know what type of disc somebody throws.
Sure. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah. There's a couple of things that I bought this year that I never thought I would buy before, and B, I'm absolutely thrilled to own. And one of them is this thing called a scepter. And what it is it's basically a disc retriever, but it's extendable. It's these sections that kind of unscrew and pull apart like a telescoping pole. But on one end there's a suction cup. On the other end there's like a little bulb that squeezes the air into and out of the suction cup. And I really don't use it as a retriever. I use it to pick up my discs. And it sounds lazy and kind of weird that you would do that. But if you think about it, my 2 favorite purchases this year are a disc golf cart and the scepter thing. And if you think about it, between picking up and putting down your bag and bending over to pick up your disc and set down your mini, you're standing up and bending down a couple 300 times around. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of energy. And I've got kind of a bad back anyway, so it's rough on my back. Mm-hmm. And between the cart and the scepter thing, I no longer have to bend down ever on the course to do anything. So at the end of a round, I'm as fresh as when I started. And I get some weird looks walking around with this kind of pole thing where I pick up the disc and just smack it on the top and the little suction cup grabs on and I pick it up and I use it to put down my mini. But I can't tell you how much I enjoy having this. And when I first saw it, they're not cheap. They're a little more expensive than you would think they might be. So I kind of balked at getting one for a while, but again, having played as long as I have and having all the stuff that I have, it was like, well, yeah, I'll get one of those. I don't need any discs or bags or anything like that. Let me try this out. And man, I'll tell you, it's awesome. I really, really like having it. I bought it after I played in a tournament with a guy who had one, and I realized, I'm like, damn, he never bent over once in the whole round. Never kneeled down, never squatted down, and my back was just screaming at me you need to buy one of those, and I'm super glad I did. So it's called a Scepter. It's by a company called World Sports, WHIRLD.
Okay.
And there's a review and a link on my blog, and the guys over there, the guy who runs that company is actually the chair for the St. Jude charity event for disc golf. So he does that. He does this other thing. But he actually gave us a coupon code for 10% off. So if you do want one, you can. There's a coupon code on my website. It's MBD for Mind Body Disc, and then the number 10 for 10%. So, but
and I'll link that up.
Cool.
I'll add it to the show notes as well.
Yeah, it's one of those oddball things that you kind of look at sideways until you have it, and you're like, oh yeah, I kind of did need one of these things.
All right, right on. So speaking of plastic, let's talk about the plastic we're throwing. What are you guys throwing? Let's start with Zach.
I drafted Devontae Freeman in the first round, and I got to tell you, he's just not been playing well for me in fantasy football, and I got to tell you, I don't think his production against Carolina was good.
He's too overstable for you is the problem.
Yeah, and it's his dreadlocks are slowing him down. It's really messing up his glide.
And you think that's causing some problems between Russia and Turkey, I'm sure.
Absolutely. No, I had...
Just a little insight to our listeners. There was this massive conversation where somebody suggested that we combined geographic politics, geopolitics, and fantasy football into our topic for this podcast. It was pretty hilarious reading.
It was good. A lot of good insight. Vladimir Putin makes a lot more sense now that we talked about it in terms of Julio Jones.
In terms of disc golf. So the next big book is Geopolitics and the Art of Disc Golf.
Patrick,
Nice.
I think that might benefit your listeners if you publish that, made that available for everyone. There's a lot to learn there. It's really deep.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Zach. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're good, man. So I am going to go with a Spider. INNOVA Spider. The first one I had was in DX plastic, and then the second one I had was in Champion plastic. I liked both of these discs, or both types of plastic. I think that the DX plastic was probably better for me. The Champion, it's real hard to get it to sit down, and they really like to skip even on grass. And I don't throw a lot of spike hyzers, so it kind of made it difficult for me. But I think it's a good utility disc. It's got a really small diameter, which I thought was really neat. It's a lot smaller than the average disc. I think it's great. Not a lot of fade to it either. It just, for me, could not get her to sit down. 5 speed, 3 glide, 0 turn, 1 fade. Anybody can throw the disc. I would tell you, if you're going to get one, get it in DX first and watch how that's going to break down over time before you run out and buy a Champion. So you can kind of anticipate that inevitable bounce that's going to come with that higher grade plastic.
Okay, right on. Tim, what are you throwing?
I am throwing a Latitude 64 Trident, which has been made out of production this year. So I stocked up on a few of them because it's one of my favorite discs, and really enjoy throwing it. It's an oddball disc. It fits between mid-range and fairway driver. It's not quite as long as a fairway driver. It's not quite as short as a mid-range. It's overstable, but it'll fly. If you throw it flat, it'll fly straight for you for a while. When it fades, it kind of just takes a 90-degree turn left. So if you've got any holes where you kind of need to go straight and then just kind of take an immediate left at the end of its flight, it works really well. Get some good skips out of it. Super popular disc. If you follow the Latitude plastic at all online, you see a lot of people really upset that Latitude decided not to make them this year.
Any insight as to why they decided not to?
They actually announced, I've got the list here. They announced 7 discs that they're not going to make in 2016. And they didn't say that they're never going to make them again, but they said in 16, they're not going to run them. And the idea is that they're not their best sellers. So I think they're trying to clean up the lineup. From what I heard, they want their dealers to not have to carry 1 million different discs.
Okay.
I think, one of the knocks on some of the companies out there is that they've got too many discs to pick from.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they're taking the lower selling discs out of the lineup for at least a year and kind of coming out with some new discs and kind of keeping their lineup so that it's still a clean lineup, not too much overlap, not too much. But I think it really comes down to what's selling. I mean, they're a company after all.
Taking the old Henry Ford marketing strategy. We're only going to have one. It's going to be in black.
There you go. Whatever color you want, as long as it's not a TRIDENT.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, awesome. The TRIDENT. Chris, what you throw on, buddy?
Well, after the last podcast with the disc golf Mad Libs, I decided to pick up a picnic table and huck that around for a little bit. And I got to be honest, it was a little bit more stable than I expected, but it handled the wind quite well. So if you're looking for a nice utility disc, doesn't go real far, but maybe about 2 feet if you're lucky.
That sounds like a pretty safe disc when you need to lay up, Chris. How would you describe the glide on that? I want to say that's probably more than that 175 grams. Would you say that really affected your ability to torque that disc off the box?
Well, as far as the glide goes, I think it's got a negative glide. And the torque really ended up on my back more than the disc. I might need a couple of weeks of physical therapy after that.
Are you able to use a scepter to pick it up?
I can't really walk right now, but I think once I get back onto the course, I'll be using the scepter quite frequently.
Right on.
So really, though, I've got the 2015 DISCRAFT Ace Race disc. A lot of you already know it's been released as the ROACH. So quick disclaimer, this one is in basic plastic, and they've probably made a few modifications to it now that it's been released in Z plastic. But at least as far as this one goes, before they've released a lot of the numbers, I felt like this one was, it's a pretty straight putter. It's somewhere around a -1, +1. I put it at about a speed 3, glide 4. What stood out about this was the glide and the controllability together. Now it wasn't straight enough or understable enough. It didn't really have enough defining characteristics to replace anything in my bag. But if I were a one putter kind of guy, the ROACH would be pretty good. It's actually a great driving putter. In the long drive contest, I threw it somewhere around 300, 325. So you can get some really good distance on it and grip it with a power grip if you like. One of the neat things is the inside of the rim is actually a little bit curved, so it throws really well for people like me who have small hands and like to throw putters with a power grip. But if you don't like to throw the power grip, you can get this thing to go straight for 100 to 200 feet. It'll go very, very straight. Put a little more power into it, and it'll turn just a little bit. But it's a great driving putter, great for straight shots. So I'm very curious to see how it's going to perform in Big Z plastic. I have a feeling that it'll take a couple of rounds to break in, but I think it's going to be a really nice approach disc.
All right, the DISCRAFT ROACH. All right, awesome.
It is a ROACH.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going DGOG right now. I'm going Disc Golf Original Gangster, okay? The INNOVA Leopard. All right, pretty standard issue here, but sometimes I think it's important that we go back and hit the basics. And if I was going to pick one disc or a couple discs that I think would be great for a new disc golfer to put under the Christmas tree, I think a Leopard would be pretty high up on that list. It's had a place in my bag since before I had a bag. Okay, I've had multiples. I've had DXs, Champions. Now I have a G-Star that I inherited from Zach, but I can almost always find a situation to throw a Leopard out on the course, any course really. So if you're not familiar with it, definitely check it out. Most people are. It's a great first disc. Speed 6, glide 5, turn -2, fade 1. It's a control driver, slightly unstable. The more you bang it in, the more unstable it's going to get. But yeah, your skill levels, everyone, pretty much beginners to pros. I like the Leopard.
Pat, can I add something onto that real quick?
Absolutely.
I completely agree. Leopard is a wonderful disc. And one thing that I've had trouble with is breaking my Leopard in. And I talked with a few people, and it turns out that leopards nowadays are actually they have a little bit less turn than they used to. It's what they call the pre-Barry Schultz leopards, had a little bit more turn, and it was a nice gentle turn. The Barry Schultz leopards are just slightly less understable, but INNOVA's come out with a Leopard 3 that is supposed to have a little bit more turn like the very early leopards. So for a lot of people who haven't thrown leopards, probably won't notice much difference, but if you've thrown a leopard before, I'd highly recommend checking out a leopard and a Leopard 3. For those of us who love leopards, there is some difference in there, and it's really neat to see the difference between the different runs.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's a good point that you bring up, because I honestly didn't know that was a thing, but but I have thrown the pre-Barry Schultz and the post-Barry Schultz, and you are exactly right. The post-Barry Schultz are a little bit more difficult to turn over. But I have not thrown the Leopard 3. I think I gave one away on Facebook a couple weeks ago. So, but yeah, good insight there. Let's give away a book. Every podcast, if you've been listening to us for some time, you know that I try to give away a signed book to somebody who's been nice enough to leave a 5-star review on Amazon for me. And I know some people go, well, if they've already left the review, they've already got the book. Yeah, that chances are it's not signed. So, take your book that you read, give it to somebody else, and get a nice signed copy of that. Drop a 5-star review for Zen and the Art of Disc Golf on Amazon, and listen to this podcast for a chance to win. All right, this review is a 5-star review titled Good Stuff by William Smith on October 7th, 2015. The format was the Kindle edition. Trying to keep this short and sweet, I like this book and have highlighted many lines which I skim through regularly just to constantly remind myself of some very important messages for my game and for my life in general. We should be good to each other and our environment, not just to be better to our surroundings, but to better ourselves, which absolutely reflects in our game. Read the book, take a breath, and enjoy the throw. So, William Smith, if you email me at zendiscgolf@gmail.com and send me your address, I'd be so happy to send you a signed copy of Zen and the Art of Disc Golf. Thank you so much for that 5-star review. All right, let's give a disc away. So every podcast, we also give a disc away to somebody who leaves us a 5-star review for the podcast on iTunes. And gentlemen, it's been a while since I looked up and seen what the reviews are. I kind of try to steer clear of them because I don't know. I just don't like to read them all the time. I usually check up on the reviews right before a podcast. There's like 35 5-star reviews now for the podcast, which is insane. Wow. It's tough to get somebody to review the podcast, but I think giving stuff away really
greases the wheel.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Greases the wheel a little bit. So this person here is going to get a Discmania MD3 G-Line. It's a blue disc. It's an awesome disc. I have several MD3s. I haven't thrown this particular disc because I try to keep my giveaway discs nice and clean for you, but I love the entire MD series from Discmania. So this one's going to your bag. This review is long, I'm warning you guys, but I felt like because they spent so much time to write the review that number one, not only did I was like, oh, they win right away, they win, but also that it deserves to be read. It's from Mercy of the Mount, and they also give their name down below, and I'll read their name as well. Their title of the review is A Found Passion and a Suda ... I couldn't get any farther of what their actual title of their review was. I couldn't find a way to read the rest. But they wrote this review for us on December 1st, 2015. I picked up disc golf about a year ago as a way to reconnect with friends I met through the Scouts years ago. I immediately found out I was terrible at it. My first mistake was disc selection. I liked the way the champion groove felt in my hand, which ended poorly. That's so funny because I think it was one of the last podcasts I reviewed the groove, which sparked a lot of controversy on social media. But that's okay. We fed on it, right? I got very frustrated and wanted to quit, but I'm a competitor and began the inner struggle to make myself better. I very slowly got a little better, and then one of my scout friends turned me on to the Zen Disc Golf podcast, and it was exactly what I needed. I now have a true passion for the game. These guys not only changed my game, but also the way I approach life. I had displaced myself from the woods since my scouting days, and disc golf has brought me back into my old sanctuary. These podcasts have become my guide to enjoying the experience more and truly brightened my mood every time I listen and re-listen. They have taught me endlessly about the game and its storied history, as well as tips for knowing my plastic and the importance of finesse. I have made tangible goals and reached them just by acknowledging them. I pace out throws, have found mentors, and have made new friends. I am regularly hitting birdies and am able to select discs that benefit me based on the podcast crew's recommendations. I find myself at the course 2 to 3 times a week and have gotten involved in building a new course at a local park, which is really rewarding. I listen more and am more understanding. I am not quick to get angry, and I try to find humor in things. I approach difficulties in the classroom where I teach with more finesse and have seen dramatic results. The kids are responding to it, and my work has become more enjoyable again. Let me see. Being happy with the experience of the game has become a recentering for me that my longtime girlfriend fully supports. She asks me regularly now when I get home, "Do you feel better?" And I always do. Zach and Pat, you have given me enjoyment for life back, and days seem longer in a positive way. I can always make time for a round to just throw. You couldn't have said it any better. This is a walking meditation. I can't wait to get my hands on the book. I was worried about winter disc golf, as this is my first cold weather disc season in Syracuse, New York, and I didn't want to miss something that has given me so much balance in my life. With perfect timing, they delivered again. Thank you truly. I hope you revisit the idea of the back pain in disc golf and physical balance, although Mind Body Disc does a great job. Zach, I hope I can meet you sometime on the course. Since I think you are relatively close, I'd be honored to play around with you. As always, look for the gap and not the trees. Enjoying the flight and just throw. Thanks for everything, Brad Hartsting. Told you it was a long one.
Wow, great review.
Well, Brad's listening, and Brad,
awesome.
If Brad has a Twitter or a Facebook, he is welcome to contact me. And even if it's in the winter months and we can't get out on the course, if he just wants to have a beer, like, that's cool too.
See, that's how down to earth Zach is. The ticklish hamster's look at that, just putting himself out there.
Hey, you never know who you're going to meet. You might make a lifelong friend.
Hey, that's what happened between you and me.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. But I mean, thank you so much, Brad, for that review. That really is what keeps us going. I think all 4 of us going, not just the love of the game, but to come back and talk about our love of the game and seeing how much it actually affects people out there around the world. You couldn't ask for a better job, really, than the ones we have to just sit here. And it's really unfortunate that we can't all sit around the same table, but we're coming to you from all parts of the United States here just to bring this show to you. And it's incredible to hear the influence that all 4 of us, the 3 of you and myself have not just on the sport, but in people's lives. And I'm very humbled, and golly, what a great thing. So that about culminates episode 17. I encourage everybody, check out the show notes. I'm going to add a lot of stuff to the show notes from the episode, give you some links to some articles that we mentioned and some products and things like that. But check out DGPutheads.com and also mindbodydisc.com. Their blogs are just taking off, and they're doing great things in disc golf. Follow all of us on Twitter and Facebook. Most importantly, more than throwing, have a great holiday season. Have a great holiday season and a very Merry Christmas. And hopefully you get some new plastic and are able to get out there and just throw. So thank you so much, guys, for joining me in this warm December morning. I don't know how it is where you guys are, but it's like 75 degrees out there. I'm going to walk barefoot out there in a minute.
It's 60 degrees all the way up here in Canada.
So thank you guys for joining me early in the morning this morning to make sure we get this podcast out before Christmas and some people can enjoy it on the course. It's always good to talk to you guys. Thank you all so much for listening. But again, most importantly, just throw.
Instead of the tickets to the gun show t-shirt, I'm wearing a shirt that says I'm jacked at a speed 14.
There you go. That's it.